Hello Frederick, happy June and happy Pride Month. My name is Jacob Hynoski, a production fellow for the City of Frederick's Communications Department. This month we celebrate the impact and advocacy that members of the LGBTQ+ community and allies have made and continue to make across the world and at home. On June 1st, Mayor Michael O'Connor, joined by members and allies of the LGBTQ+ community, issued a proclamation recognizing June as Pride Month and kicking off a month of acknowledgement, commemoration, and celebration. Frederick is home to many different LGBTQ+ shops and businesses, as well as facilitating areas demonstrating solidarity and pride in the community. One organization that has been at the forefront of LGBTQ+ representation, action, and celebration has been the Frederick Center. Starting as a youth group in 2012, the original 4 founders of what would be the Frederick Center, Austin Beach, Cindy Beach, Diane Enyenguez, and Brian Walker, held the first Frederick Pride event at Ballinger Creek Park. This event would continue to grow into what we know as Frederick Pride. Later this month, the annual Frederick Pride event will take place along our lovely Carroll Creek. This fun, family-friendly event hosts numerous local businesses and vendors across Frederick, led by the Frederick Center. Last year, Frederick Pride witnessed a record turnout with roughly 40,000 LGBTQ+ community members and allies coming together to celebrate. The City of Frederick is honored to be home of one of the largest Pride events in the state and Mid-Atlantic region, and welcome people from all walks of life to be part of our community as they invite us to be part of their community. We are proud to say that the City of Frederick has achieved a perfect score of 100 on the Municipal Equity Index, an evaluation conducted by the Human Rights Campaign on how inclusive and protective a municipality is of the LGBTQ population and their rights. I recently had the pleasure of co-hosting a panel discussion with some of our local LGBTQ+ leaders. Delegate Chris Fair, who represents District 3, which includes the City of Frederick in the Maryland General Assembly, joined us for a discussion on Pride Month. Delegate Fair is also the Executive Director of the Frederick Center. Delegate Fair has strong local ties to the Frederick area and is a graduate of both Frederick Community College and Hood College, with a bachelor's degree in history and political science. We're also joined by Ronnie Taylor, a Black trans activist who is the Legislative Director for Delegate Chris Fair and the Staff Advisor to the Diversity Coalition at Hood College. Ronnie is also involved with the Frederick Center and is the Vice Chair of the Frederick Center Board. Our third panelist, Serena Roy, served as a police officer in the Frederick Police Department and later went on to found and open Dublin Roasters, a local coffee shop that was created on the concept of having a big heart for its customers, its community, and of course, its coffee. Serena was kind enough to open her doors to host our Pride Month panel discussion, as she has done so many times for the people and organizations looking for safe community gathering spaces. I am also happy to introduce my co-host, Alexandra Allward, a recent Frederick Community College alum and previous Student Government Association president at FCC. During Alex's time as president of the SGA, Alex worked with college staff to make positive changes campus-wide and became a voice for the students of FCC. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Serena. Thank you for hosting. This is amazing.
Very welcome.
So, why don't we get started? So, what does Pride Month mean to you?
Well, I think, we were all pondering these questions, and I think, Pride Month to me happens for me every single day. So I think having a dedicated month of June just makes me kind of sit back and take some moments and think about, okay, how far we've come, where I've come from, and where I'm going. But because, every day we're living our Pride dream every single day. So it's just nice to stop and take stock in where we've come from.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
To bounce off of that, I would say that it's a time of reflection, I think, for a lot of queer people. Where did we come from? How did we get to where we're at today? Folks that grew up here or didn't, all of us kind of equally look at, where did this all start? Which obviously started at the Stonewall Inn with a riot. I mean, a response to an overly aggressive police department attacking queer people, and that started the modern civil rights movement for LGBTQ people. And that's one of the reasons we celebrate this month. So we think about like where our heritage comes from and where this movement comes from, and then we recognize how far that movement has taken us thus far. And yet at the same time, we use it as an opportunity to highlight how far we still have to go.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
You're fine. You stole my answer, so I say.
Well, then let me ask you, how do you...
She wrote me the answer to me. Out.
Wrote it out. It's all right. So how do you guys show your pride, especially in Pride Month?
That's a little conflicting for me. I always say that it's to be seen, felt, and heard every day, but very similar to what Serena said, it's every day. I think that as a Black trans woman, oftentimes I tell people, and just people of the queer experience, we can't get wrapped up in capital, patriarchy, and rainbow capitalism. You know, we have to get so far away from that, and we have to remember the roots in which pride existed, and just continue to educate folks and really get to where we need to be. It's a really great month full of lots of celebrations worldwide, but that still doesn't dim the fact that there's still work to do.
Gotcha. So what are some of those like ways that we can educate, ways that we can celebrate at the same time?
Well, I'll touch on the education piece. The key thing to do is to understand the roots of our community, and also that our community exists for another 11 months out of the year beyond June. And so all the great work and energy that's put into recognizing queer needs are very well highlighted during June, and then come July 1, when queer people are arguing, you know, or debating for their rights, or simply making a case for why they need more support, those are the times when communities can really stand up, recognize LGBTQ experiences and lived experiences, and support them by making sure that they are given the same equitable treatment that everyone else in society deserves. So that piece of education is critical.
Okay, awesome. And those education facilities, like the Frederick Center, how do those specifically like help with educating?
Yeah, so we provide training. It's called LGBTQ 101, or we do a 201 even, where we do cultural competency and awareness. So we try to keep people engaged as to what the modern terminology is, what our modern challenges are that are facing our community, and also really what are kind of some of the scoping statistics for the size of our community, because people do not realize that as our society has become more open and more affirming as a whole, more and more people have felt confident to come out. So people who were historically closeted are now coming out in larger numbers. So you're seeing a huge increase in the percentage of our population that's identifying as LGBTQ+.
Awesome, awesome. Okay.
And you know, the education, it is, you know, formal in some ways, and also informal in another way. And how to educate is to just be open to questions. And you know, honestly, some people just want to be able to see that a person made it through it, mostly unscathed. And you know, that's something that can help boost their self-esteem, so that they can also, you know, do the same and come out, or be comfortable in sharing with somebody else. So it's about, you know, being visible, and you know, having the courage to just live who you are is part of the education, so that other people will come forward and ask questions.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Alex, you've experienced a lot at Frederick Community College.
That was actually going to be my next question, is how do institutions like Dublin Roasters and the Frederick Center and other Frederick kind of establishments such as Frederick Community College foster opportunities for the LGBTQ community besides education? Because education isn't just all of it. There's other things that people have to do. So how do you all do that?
Well, you know, answering for Dublin, we just create a very safe place here. It's a safe space where I think everybody who walks through the door understands how diverse the people are in the room. You know, I think when you walk in, you might see some people from, you know, both sides of the aisle. You're going to see all, you know, wealthy, poor, just members of the community in all aspects. So it just automatically feels like a safe space because everybody can meet in the same location. Another thing that we like to do is just open our doors. I kind of call it my clubhouse. So I have a clubhouse, and you're allowed to use it, especially if you're a nonprofit. So animals, the Frederick Center, before you got your own space, anybody was allowed to use it. Right now the ASL classes are using it, and they're really, we're realizing how much of the deaf population is queer. So it's mixing. It's when you open one avenue, it seems like it floods into so many other places. So it's really just being open and providing a safe space.
And I'll just add on being intentional as you're doing it. Serena kind of touched on it briefly there, and I just want to reiterate, intentionality, especially with intersectionality, is really, really critical. Understanding that there are spaces to be built that are safe for all community members, also while recognizing that there are spaces that need to be unique for individual community members to be able to collect with each other, share common lived experience, and be able to work with one another. The center provides obviously a series of support groups. It's been one of the key foundations of our center that we were built on since 2012, which we do weekly, and a lot of those are intersectional support groups specifically designed for one community to be able to collect with each other and share their experiences with one another. But outside of that, going out into the community and just simply talking to folks and making sure that people understand, like, this is the important policies that we're looking at, this is the important reasons why we need to affirm LGBTQ people, not just accept them, not just be like, oh, it's cool that they're here, but actually openly affirm and celebrate their identities, because it's actually better for our entire society when we do that kind of lifting. And I'll mention that the final piece of the puzzle is really government action. And so we've been honored to partner with the City of Frederick for a number of years now to help make sure that our Municipality Equality Index survey through the Human Rights Campaign is a perfect score, to make sure that our city is listed as one of the most affirming cities in the state of Maryland, and that the Maryland is considered one of the safest states in the country for LGBTQ plus people. So that work is really, really critical to creating that kind of environment and culture that encourages diversity and encourages people to live their authentic selves.
So you had mentioned that Frederick is very open and very inclusive of everyone, but how has that changed in recent years? Like, how have we become more inclusive, and are there ways to improve upon that as well?
Well, do you want to answer first, or I don't want to put you on the spot?
No, not at all. So I'm not a Frederictonian. However, I have been here for the last 7 years, and I will say that I have seen the progression as I've gotten to live here. I mentioned earlier to some of the production, I kind of came from West Virginia, so coming here, I was like, what am I doing with my life? What is happening here? This is way too much. However, I had to take into account all of my surroundings as a Black trans person living in America, because unfortunately we're dying left and right. And so my safety was never put into question living here in Frederick. And so that for me felt important. I saw the visibility of folks such as the Frederick Center. I saw organizations, whether it was high school queer student unions or other affiliations, really being at the forefront of a lot of the fights. And so just even driving down our main downtown road, despite Pride Month, seeing the display of affirming signage and flags meant a lot to me. So I knew that it was going to be a good place for a good little while.
Mm-hmm.
Glad that was
It's a wonderful answer.
glad it's a good place
Yeah.
for you. I'm really glad.
Well, yeah, you go ahead.
Well, I'll add on and just say that I graduated from Lincoln High School. There was 0 out students at my school when I graduated in 2002, all the way back then. So just 20 years ago, there was all of us were deeply, deeply closeted and scared to come out. I remember my first party I went to, and I was just like, oh my God, there's other gay people in Frederick County. I truly did not believe that was true. And to see how far this city has progressed in this conversation is heartwarming. Again, there's always room for expansion and strengthening our relationships and ties to queer people to help celebrate that diversity. But even having a business like Dublin, who is so at the forefront of saying, like, when you're here, you're safe, is a huge step in the right direction for our community. Especially because it's queer-led, because we have somebody in the community saying we're going to do that protection, we are going to create that space, really helps to build a more inclusive, better diverse community. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Well, and just adding on to that, so I feel like we've gone from this is an age thing, I guess, but so I've been here 30 years. And I moved from a very rural place where I was not out and I had no clue. Just to share a little personal side of how far Frederick's come. So when I came here in my early 20s, I decided to work for the city also, so I was a city police officer. And it was back then, this was in, a long time ago, 97. I was encouraged to actually come out as I was coming out from the city, from the police department. And so that to me was very affirming, and I think Frederick was changing back then. And I was protected very much by all the guys I work with in my department. So I felt like, I had such a great experience and a safe space that it just, as I was coming out, I think it just resonated with me that you create the safe space and then people will talk to you. So going forward, when I've, switched hats from police work to coffee, it's just the same thing. It was kind of a natural, organic progression that, I was born into a safe space being in Frederick. I'm going to create that safe space. So kudos to Frederick City back then, honestly.
Well, kudos to you for creating another safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need more of those.
Definitely.
And I'll just say that Ronnie and Serena and I think there's an identical thread running through all of our conversations here, which is we went through our own journey of self-discovery. And when we came out on the other side, the first thing that you'll see is we attempt to build new areas, new avenues for other people to feel confident and comfortable and living their authentic selves. And I think that's an identity thing with queer people. As soon as they build out their own journey and they have that self-discovery, they immediately try to, as we like to say, send the elevator back down to pull other people back up with them. It's never just a journey of one individual living for themselves, but rather a collective journey of the community.
Gotcha. And that journey is still going. You're still providing others, helping them on their journey. So where do you see the future of those journeys continuing? What's next?
I mean, it's already, become so great in that it's not an awareness that I personally think of every day. So I know that is coming a long way and it's getting better and better. And being able to, have Pride in downtown Frederick and have 10, 20,000 people show up is very affirming. So that continuation to, pave that yellow brick road so that you no longer see the edges to the road. It's just so vast that it becomes kind of a natural thing. And I think that would make it, a safe place. I'm not saying work is never going to be completely finished, but I think there will be a time when it's kind of a moot point. I hope anyway.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is, "This work isn't over until marginalized people stand together and say enough is enough, like the work is done." And, as much as I would like to be able to be optimistic and say that, I will say that Maryland has been great. We have a really great administration. We have a really great legislative body that really believes and is pushing us forward. However, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, in terms of the United States, we still have a lot to go. There are states like Florida in which are going completely backwards. However, for people in the state of Maryland, and particularly Frederick City, to be able to live in the authentic truth, to be able to have representatives of the people that look and reflect the governments in which we serve is really important. And so I think as long as we're doing that, we're doing something. And I think oftentimes in times we have to give ourselves grace and space, especially when queer people are in the front lines of this work, and be able to say, in this moment, I'm doing enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And to have no one left behind.
Yep.
To make sure everybody is, taken care of.
I just think I really appreciated your point that you mentioned on Florida because, of course, Frederick is extremely liberal-minded, and it's been such a safe space for the queer community. But how does Frederick's work extend outside of itself in your mind to help those in states like Florida and states like Texas where they are, again, still marginalizing queer people at vast rates?
So, speaking from from the center's perspective, it's our young people absolutely hear and know what's happening every day. They understand exactly what's happening to their community in other states throughout the country, and it's having devastating impacts on them and their mental health. With that being said, they recognize that joint community queer effort, that idea of lifting each other, and so the first thing that they want to do is to help. And so when it's time to write a letter, they write a letter. When it's time to make a phone call, they make a phone call. These are kids. They shouldn't be worried about this stuff, to be clear. They shouldn't have to spend their days in and out concerned about their safety or the safety of their friends or people that they don't know, but that they know have a similar experience to them. But they do because they care about the survival of our community. And so that piece of the puzzle is that queer people in Maryland can help queer people in Florida and Texas and others, and Tennessee and other states that are really struggling to recognize and celebrate the diversity in their state.
Yep.
I think that's a great point.
That is, that's the larger way to like get the word out and provide the support. And it is also, that rock in a pond ripple effect. You affect what you can right in front of you and change, not necessarily change someone's views, but allow that question that might be off the wall. And it's not to make them feel comfortable, it's to let them see a little bit inside your world, to see that, maybe there aren't so many differences that you think. Maybe I'm still going out to get a gallon of milk and some cereal for the kids, and it's the same thing you're doing. There's that. It's being able to, affect change on people right around you, and that causes a ripple. You have that good experience and you're able to convey what you want to convey, and they walk away a little bit more comfortable, and or hey, wow, our lives are not so different. We kind of are wearing the same pants, kind of thing. So that's how I like to affect. It's just so overwhelming to say I want to change this globally. It's like, what can you do locally that can affect a bigger part of the world? So.
And Serena makes a very good point that should always be taken in. Recognizing the limitations and realities of what we can and can't impact is okay. Yeah. It is not considered a loss to recognize that we cannot solve this problem globally or even nationally. However, we can do our part to make this little space of Maryland a little bit safer and a little bit better for our community. And sometimes that's the best we can do at that moment, and it's enough for us as a society.
And it is to recognize the fact that you're not going to change everybody's mind. We don't all have people that we like. Doesn't matter who they are, right? So like working with the police department, I can say it's such a diverse group of people that I work with. One person had to kind of be my partner and work with me and realize that we had the same struggles and we were getting the same phone calls from home, and there was somebody sick and somebody forgot lunch. And after a while, this Baptist Christian person said, you know what, I'm glad I got to spend that 6 weeks with you, because I really didn't understand how equal we really were and how very similar lives we live. So yes, okay, that affected change for the rest of his life, my life. But there's also, another 1% in the police department that felt that, being gay, you were a pedophile. Mm-hmm. So, there's that, you're not going to change that person's mind. There's nothing you can do about that. And I think that's taught and a fear and whatever. But you can still, be respectful, and you still carry yourself how you want to, knowing that you might not be able to change their mind, but also, you have a boundary, and this is how it's going to be, so you don't have to like me, but you have to respect me.
That was an excellent answer from everyone,
Yeah. Awesome.
Maybe you, Ronnie, talk about the experiences at Hood and how the Hood community has lifted each other. Queer people have lifted each other at Hood.
Yeah, I think that in terms of my experience at Hood, again, hats off and shout out to the Frederick Center. They worked in really strong collaboration with our Queer Student Union. I felt like for the beginning, and you never want this perception of like I'm the only one in the room. However, I tell people that my ancestors paved the way for me in order for me to live out loud in truth. And so I didn't mind people knowing I lived my life, and I continue to live my life as a out Black trans woman. And so to see that representation in the office where I supported the administrative functions or in the classroom in which I taught, I think it built a strong community for our students. And we began to see more students feel empowered to be able to do the things and come out and work with local nonprofit organizations to do the work. Whether it was Hartley House, whether it was the Frederick Center, and the list can go on and on and on in terms of the different pieces of intersectionality and diversity in which they were willing to serve.
Amazing. We had a similar sort of experience with like diversity among our group when we were at FCC. Like our group had people from all different kinds of backgrounds, and that led to us learning more and more about like what their lives have been and what they have had to go through. So seeing that in person is a lot different than, you know, just reading about it or just listening to a story. So having those areas where you can sort of celebrate everybody's differences, celebrate pride, I think those are very important. And so Frederick Pride, the event that we're going to have later this month, is there anything you can tell me a little bit more about that? I know we had some pretty big records last year, but what are we setting up for this year?
Yeah, so the festival is practically the entirety of Carroll Creek at this point. We've left very little left on the table anymore. It extends from Market Street all the way out to Patrick Street, going east, and it is on both sides of the creek. This year we have a record-setting 200 vendors that will be set up on the creek from various businesses and backgrounds, food and entertainment, and items that you can purchase, and all kinds of great opportunities to connect with community resources. Obviously the city will be there, various city departments will be there, the county will be there, various county departments will be there. It's going to be an incredible event, but we have a full day of entertainment, 3 entertainment stages laid out along the creek. We have an amazing beverage garden that includes 8 local distillers, brewers, and wineries that will be set up serving all day, as well as we have our zero alcohol options for our friends that are in recovery or that simply do not choose to drink. We do have alternative options for them as well. And the event itself will run on Saturday, June 24th from 11 a.m. To 6 p.m., but there's also countless other pre-Pride events that you can go to, including the city's wonderful proclamation that they had on June 1st, but there's also the Brunswick City Proclamation that's happening as well this year. We have numerous events where people can get together, like Queer Open Mic Night. We just had our Queer Tea Party. We are having a upcoming event interfaith service, as well as we have Pride Night out at the Keys Stadium, which is super fun, and you get to see Coyote in his special Pride uniform that he has. And I shouldn't gender Coyote. We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And but we have all of these great opportunities, and then things for young people like Queer Prom is coming up on June 28th as well. So young people are able to have a space where they can really feel super empowered and connected to the community.
Fantastic.
So it's a ton of events.
So obviously in the queer community, the saying "born this way" comes up a lot, but you don't always know that you're queer. How did you first discover that identity in yourself? I'd love to hear about that.
Whew. So it's a little complex with me. I tell people, I proudly tell people I had to come out 3 times. I grew up in a very Black, conservative, Christian household. In fact, I grew up in the church, and so we were there every day if we could be. And so it wasn't easy for my family, and it definitely wasn't easy for me to identify these feelings in which I had, because however, growing up in such a conservative church, you're taught the feelings that you have, you're doomed and you're deemed to hell. And so as a young child, you didn't want to hear that. However, I kind of was outed my first time. Unfortunately, back then, schools didn't have the competency or the curriculum training, and so I was outed by a high school guidance counselor to my mom. And at that point, I was like, well, it's kind of like out there, so I have to like call it a thing. And so I came out as bisexual then because I didn't know. And I didn't know, and I also needed to feel the safety of feeling like I had a home in somewhat of a village. And at that time, I tell this story to say my family has come such a long way, but at that time, I was taught in the church, this isn't okay, but we're just not going to talk about it. Butch it up. However, the second time I was like, being bisexual just ain't working for me. Like, I'm having more boyfriends than girlfriends at this point in my life. Like, this just isn't a thing. And so I came out as gay, very similar. Butch it up, don't talk about it. Like, it was, I tell people growing up in a black household, we all have that formal living room that no one can step inside of, and we got this big old beautiful carpet, and it just all swept underneath that carpet. And I'm sure if my family walks in it now, they're gonna trip because of all the stuff that we just hid underneath of that. And so when I found the language, and that was important for me because I grew up in a time in which the language surrounding being transgender, the language and the representation wasn't there. The only representation was shows like Jerry Springer and Maury Povich. And I knew I wasn't that. However, when I found the language and the understanding, I came out as trans, and that was not easy. To tell some of the story, you know, I faced a lot. I grew up in the Prince George's, DC area, and I survived survival sex work amongst homelessness, but I came out on the other side of it, and I came out better than ever. And I tell anybody, I don't want a pity party because it helped to empower me in the best way. I was surrounded by my queer elders in the community that took care of me and took me in. I was able to get a degree and educate myself, and I came out better than ever. And so the representation, again, is there. When I tell my story to a youth, it is, I don't want to tell you this to scar you, to just let you know that no matter how hard it may be, there is another side on the other end of this. And I think that's just really it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So, as I mentioned before, I was still deeply in the closet in 2002 when I graduated from high school. I had begun doing activism work after the murder of Matthew Shepard in 1998. And that really kind of was a life-changing moment for me as an individual, but it also reminded me how truly unsafe it is to be out, and which reminded me my freshman year in high school to stay as deeply in the closet as possible for the next 4 years of my life. But I did believe that I could do more, I keep tapping myself. I did believe, however, that I could move the needle by being this ally for LGBT people, which is a common refrain that you see amongst a lot of allies. They're trying to dip their toe in the water of the community, nervous to actually come out themselves. And so about 2 years after high school was over, I came out to my parents. There was an interesting show the other day that I was watching, and the person defined it, said, I couldn't hold it in anymore. And I think that's such a unique way of looking at it. It's literally, it consumes you. It's in every interaction that you have. It's in every discussion that you have. It's every time somebody talks to you. You're thinking, do I look? Do I appear? I remember a guy talked to me once, and my mother came over and was like, you did realize he was flirting with you, right? And I was like, oh my God, I can't allow that to go on. Like, I can't. Why did he flirt with me? What was he thinking? Like, why, what is happening here? But it becomes so much of who you are that you literally can't hold it in anymore, because it's either going to destroy you or you are going to live out openly. And so finally in 2004, I finally told my parents that I was gay, and they asked if I was bisexual. And I was like, one foot's out, I might as well I already said the words, so let's keep moving forward with gay. And of course, a lot of people wanted to tell me that they knew, and obviously it was obvious. And I understood where it was coming from. It wasn't particularly helpful, I will say, for people to tell you, oh gee, thanks, I was sitting here suffering for years and years on this. But at the same time, it was their way of trying to connect and trying to be human with me in that moment, which was so important. So that coming out process was interesting. I thought that there was going to be like this whole new world opened, and it wasn't. It was just, I went back to work the next day. I worked my normal shift. I went home. I ate my dinner. I could not find a guy to save my life. But then once I started opening my eyes to community, I realized that there were a lot of queer people in Frederick. There were a lot of queer people in Frederick. And that if we could start to build community the way Serena has around Dublin, or the way Ronnie has, especially in the trans community nationally, that suddenly you start opening your eyes and you realize, oh my God, we're everywhere. And then you're like, oh, this is so cool when we all come together. And people ask all the time, how did Frederick Pride become Frederick Pride? It's simple. We put an event in the middle of the city of Frederick, hung a banner that showed a rainbow flag, and said, if you want to come, come. And people came flooding in the thousands. So we know that they're out there. It's just a matter of connecting the community together and finding those ways of doing it. And from my end, it's partially selfish. It's so that I can have a sense of community around me too, in addition to helping to provide community for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think what you both said, you know, it's like once you do step out that door, you've been bursting to get out, and the door's shut, because I'm not going backwards and I'm not opening that door again. Already been in that door, so so it is just to move forward. And how do you move forward? To make it better for yourself and others. And it's exactly it. I just couldn't say it any better, you know, just can't go backwards.
No.
Yeah, I loved both of your stories, and I loved especially what you were saying about language and how that so much impacts coming out. I had a very similar experience. I came out as bisexual first when I was very young in like middle school, because that's what I knew. That was what I was being told by my friends, that was this identity, and I kind of identified with it, but it didn't feel right. And I think that, I'll be so honest, I think my sexuality is still evolving and changing as my understanding of gender evolves, and my own gender and other people's gender and the genders I'm attracted to. And I think the beautiful thing about that is that the older queer generation has definitely paved the way for that to happen for me. They've allowed me to kind of have this understanding of myself. And so I want to thank both of you, because you were explaining things that have impacted my own life as a queer person, as a younger person. And I think Frederick Pride, yeah, like having that as a kid growing up, having Pride as a kid growing up, I'm going to be really honest, I had a great experience. I didn't feel like I had to come out in this big way to people. I just felt like I could be myself. And of course I had to worry about what my parents said, because my mom was religious, but I never felt like I had to worry, because I knew there was going to be a community in Frederick for me and where I lived for me. And so thank you all so much. Like, it's, as a young queer person, it's amazing to have queer leaders in the community you live in, paving the way and showing you that you're going to be accepted.
Well, and if I can, just to tie all that together in a neat bow, queer young people are redefining what society looks like in such a healthy way. They are moving the needle, not just on understanding sexuality and who we're sexually attracted to, but also who are we romantically attracted to, and building language about the difference between the two. They are building language around gender that we never understood prior, but it's creating language that people like my husband, who's, you know, in his 30s, is looking at now and going, oh, I didn't realize that language even existed, or that there were words for how I was feeling about this prior to this work and prior to seeing how our community has opened up. And so from that end, I will just say that listening to young people when they talk about how to support one another and about how they're feeling, as we've kind of wedged the door slightly open on this conversation, they're the ones that are going to kick it open. And they're going to be like, this is what society is. And it's okay that you have these feelings, because there's actually a word for these feelings, whether that's romantically or sexually or around gender. It is real and valid. And I think you're going to see a lot of older people who are going to be like, oh my God, I never knew there was a word for that. Oh my God, I never knew there was like an actual like way of verbalizing that sense of relationship. And I think that that's an incredibly encouraging sign for our community. And by that I mean our entire community, not just, LGBTQ plus.
Yeah, thank you.
It was great getting to discuss Pride with an amazing panel. Thanks again to everyone who participated on the panel, and thank you for taking the time to watch our discussion. As we continue to celebrate Pride, we must also acknowledge the attacks and hardship that the LGBTQ+ community faces. Unfortunately, certain lawmakers and policy, old and new, continue to make it difficult for the LGBTQ+ community to express their identities and who they choose to love. As mentioned in the panel, the state of Florida has made it difficult for LGBTQ+ education and expression to exist. This year alone, Florida has passed 6 anti-LGBTQ+ bills into law, including a license to discriminate in healthcare. This is America, and everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Human Rights Campaign recently declared a state of emergency for the LGBTQ+ community over state laws and anti-LGBTQ rhetoric targeting LGBTQ+ people as evidence. As you heard from our panelists, these attacks and rhetoric are designed to eliminate the progress our country has made since members of our LGBTQ+ community rioted at the Stonewall Inn in 1969 and birthed the LGBTQ+ movement and can't be allowed to succeed. The City of Frederick pledges its aid in protecting the rights of all who call Frederick home and will continue to uphold the values that celebrate our community. Thank you and happy Pride.